a few theories on that. But first, a little information as to the shirt. I found this in a great little place called Kipskania. You ever been there? It's in, if you ever go to Copenhagen in Denmark, it's this collective of people that have just kind of taken over a military installation and made it into a community and gone against the authorities, and it all works out great. Kind of like this place. Except they sell hash, but, well, all right, maybe a lot like this place. But as far as this particular shirt, they were selling this shirt on the street, and I said, "Wow, this is amazing." Because as you may know, we had a bit of a run-in with the Ford Motor Company earlier this year, and unlike most of their victims, we weren't driving one of their cars when we had that run-in. What happened to us is a little bit more sinister. It was back in 1999, way back in 1999, that competition of a sort opened up in the internet domain registration business. I say of a sort because one company was still in charge of all the database, maintaining the database and all that kind of thing. But all of a sudden there were a bunch of new companies that you could register names through, and unlike the previous company, Network Solutions, you could register certain nasty words. Yeah. So for a while there was a whole lot of activity. People were registering four-letter word sites faster than you can possibly imagine. And as with any speech issue, we took an interest, and we registered a few of our own. So if you go to motherfucking.net, that's us. Fucktheinternet.com, yep, we got that one too. And I think we're going to use that. But we also grabbed fuckthemassmedia.com, thinking that one day we'd have a pretty good watchdog site that would show the American mass media for what it was, even though they do a pretty good job of that themselves every day. We also registered fuckcbs.com and fucknbc.com. We were too late for Fuck Fox and Fuck ABC. And Fuck Disney was like the first one taken. But we were happy with what we had. We pointed fucknbc.com to CBS and fuckcbs.com to NBC. And NBC right away sent us a cease and desist letter telling them that we had no right to put their company name in our domain name. No right to use our name at all. They called it trademark infringement. Well, we had a pretty good laugh over that. And then we decided to print the letter. When you have a magazine, you can do that. And so we printed the letter, and when we did so, we commended CBS publicly for not behaving as childishly as NBC. And 2 weeks after that issue hit the stands, we got a cease and desist letter from CBS. Fuck the mass media. We also had a site called fuckgeneralmotors.com, which resulted in a cease and desist letter from General Motors. And at this point, it was almost getting boring. And I know a lot of people are thinking, and more than quite a few have asked me, what's the point of registering all these sites that obviously exist just to piss off big corporations? Isn't it a big waste of time and resources? Well, I don't think it is for a very simple reason. Free speech is under attack in the United States. Quite a bit, in fact, over the last few years. And if we're to have any chance of winning in the fight to save it, we have to push back a bit. And rather than always being on the defensive, sometimes you have to provoke a monster in order to get rid of it. So we provoked all these monsters, but none of them had the audacity to actually follow through and drag us into court because we decided to say something critical about them. Offensive as the language may have been, we felt it was important to draw a line in the sand and stand up for anyone's right to express themselves. And then we got sued. The weird part was the company suing us was Ford. We looked all over to see what Ford sites we had. Fuck Ford, Ford sucks, Ford really sucks, Ford loves. We didn't have any of them. So why were these people suing us? Well, it took a while to find out because also while they were trying to sue us, they were trying to serve us the papers and they couldn't find us. And literally for 2 weeks, we just heard of them calling, trying to find out where we were. They could never actually pin us down. But finally it arrived in the mail. And that's when we found out what site they were angry about. Our old friend, fuckgeneralmotors.com. Now, why would they be angry at us for saying fuck General Motors? We checked to see if maybe one company had bought the other or something while we weren't looking. But no, they were still competitors. It took a little while, but we figured it out. Back when General Motors got all bent out of shape over the domain, we weren't even using it for anything. We just had the domain registered. It wasn't even pointing anyplace. But then once they called attention to it, by threatening to sue us, we decided to point it someplace else. First to General Motors, then we pointed it to a consumer watchdog group that told about unsafe cars. And then after that, we pointed it to the competition, Ford. And then, we honestly forgot all about it because, quite frankly, we had more important things to worry about. Now, if Ford had simply contacted us and asked us to point the domain someplace else, we probably would have done it, as long as they weren't threatening us. But they didn't even threaten us. They just sued us without a second thought. And this is what they do to anybody that they want to go away. They just sue them. They sue them into oblivion. It usually works. It's the American system of justice. And like every other American system of anything, it's based entirely on how much money you have. It doesn't matter that Ford makes absurd and irrational claims that pointing a domain at them is somehow an act of fraud, and more irrational claims that nobody has the right to point domains or even link to them without permission. They actually said this in court. It doesn't even matter if they had the ability to block any redirects with a few keystrokes of their own. They didn't know they could do this. They could block us from connecting to them. But they were using a Microsoft product of some sort. They didn't know how to use it. They have massive amounts of money, and they can sue anyone they want, anytime they want. And that's the point. So if by registering that site you manage to show the world how the system operates, then at least that's one small victory that made it somewhat worthwhile. That case was heard back in May, and a decision has yet to be reached. It's now August. Unbelievable. And in the meantime, we've launched a new site, FordReallySucks.com, and we couldn't get FordSucks.com because Ford already sued the person who registered that one and won. So this is how it goes in America. And the mass media just never seems to get it. Probably because the mass media is run by the same corporations that love to sue people all the time. Let's just quickly go over them. CBS, they're owned by Viacom. Right? Viacom is suing us. CNN, they're owned by Time Warner. Warner Brothers is suing us. And Time Warner, in turn, is owned by AOL. Need I say more? NBC is General Electric. They're making an airplane. And other than sending us a threatening letter, I don't think they're suing us, but I haven't checked my mail in the last couple of days. And Fox, that's one of the major motion pictures. They're suing us. ABC, their parent is Disney. Of course, Disney isn't on it. So virtually, all the American mass media is what the hell's going on out there? Donald Duck is like getting upset. Virtually all the American mass media is actively engaged in suing a hacker magazine. And yet there are people out there who wonder why they don't cover stories about hacking fairly. Well, gee. I did an interview recently on CNN International, which is about 100 times better than the CNN we get back in the States. But they still ask me the same dumb questions. Why are hackers releasing the code red worm and crippling the entire internet? Why are you hurting poor defenseless corporations with denial of service attacks? What did the Pentagon ever do to you? To be honest, I couldn't give a rat's ass about code red or the people who fall victim to it. I mean, how many times do you have to be told not to run Microsoft programs blindly without installing patches with a multitude of security holes you're going to get with them? I mean, there was a patch available to stop code red more than a month earlier. And I think anyone who didn't bother to pay attention really deserves what they get. And I think the same thing's for all the idiots who constantly trust Outlook Express and get hit with an email virus every 2 weeks. And I'm beginning to think they enjoy it. But this has been going on for years after all, the same thing. And now there's a mutated version of Code Red. Have you heard about this one? It actually opens up a backdoor to any machine that's still unprotected. And theoretically, you could actually infect a machine with Code Red 2, gain access to it, and download and install the patch yourself. I confess, That makes me kind of happy because anything that helps to weed out all the idiots on the net has got to be a good thing. But how do you say that to the media without them labeling you some kind of terrorist? See, I wish they had devoted more time to the stupid Surcam virus. That is a royal pain in the ass. From what I understand, it hits the usual Outlook Express morons who blindly open up an evil attachment and then it proceeds to grab a random bunch of bare files. And that winds up being several megs in size, and then they get sent to a bunch of other people who get the thrill of being on the receiving end of someone else's stupidity. And virtually every public mailbox on our system, on 2600, got several hundred megs of junk in 1 week before we were able to install the filters. I mean, you really got to hand it to Microsoft. We don't even run their software, but we still get screwed by it. But Surcam started right when I first got to Europe, which was mid-July. And I thought it would be a good idea, while I was away, to copy all of my email to a Hotmail account, also owned by Microsoft. That way I could just pop into a net cafe, check my mail without having to log into my home system. Well, thanks to Surcam, my Hotmail account lasted about 30 minutes before it went over the 2 meg limit and it was shut off. Now, if I launched a denial of service attack against Microsoft that crippled their incoming mail, I doubt they'd just brush it off. Now, how is it any different when they cripple us because their software remains so vulnerable to every script kiddie on the planet? I mean, if they really want to start prosecuting people for breaking the net, why not start with Microsoft? But it would be nice if the media covered this, or at least considered this alternative perspective. It would be nice if the media covered the Dmitry Skalarov case. And for those who don't know, Dmitry was finally released on Monday, $50,000 cash bail. For those who really don't know, Dmitry was the first person criminally prosecuted under the DMCA. Yours truly was the first person civilly prosecuted. And what that basically means that if we both lose, he gets to go to jail, I get to go bankrupt. That's, again, the American system of justice. And our crimes, respectively, were writing and publishing software that decrypts certain forms of technology, gets around forms of encryption. And when we fought the Motion Picture Association of America back year 2000 and this year in the appeal, and that also has yet to be decided, we always knew the day was coming when somebody would go to jail over this. And now that day has arrived in America. And wouldn't that be a nice thing for the media to focus attention on? There are protests in many American cities all around the world for Dmitry's release, further solidifying the vital connection between hackers and activists. We've woken up, and now we're starting to get others outside the hacker community to wake up and see the dark road the American government and corporations have pushed us down, to see what the American mass media won't tell you. And if you think it's confined to our borders, you've got a hell of a surprise coming. And I've often tried to figure out what America's problem is and why we keep doing things that wind up hurting everyone. America's like that proverbial kid at school that keeps getting left behind. You know, he has a lot of potential if he only learned to apply himself and stop picking on all the other kids. And we do have so much potential. But we can never get away from this whole world domination thing. I just visited Scandinavia. I was simply blown away by what people in countries like Denmark and Norway have that we don't have back in America. Things like 5 or 6 weeks vacation a year. Man, we're lucky if we get 2. We're lucky if we get 2. Working hours of 35 hours a week or less. Talk to some .com people, see how many hours a week they work. I've heard people work 80 hours a week in America. Free healthcare, ha! Free education. They don't have a war on drugs over there because people are given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to fucking up their lives. And guess what? Less people abuse drugs as a result. Kids are given more independence and more ability to make decisions regarding what they want to do, how they want to live their lives. And from what I saw, they're pretty damn responsible and mature. In America, even at 20 years old, you're still not considered mature enough to drink a beer. Of course, you can go marching off to war at 17, but that's something different. So this maturity and basic trust of the individual is not something that's isolated to Scandinavia. It's true all over Europe. In fact, it's true all over the world. We've become the exception in the States. And you know, it's good to be different. It really is, but not when being different consistently makes things worse. We dangle certain concepts in front of our people: dangerous criminals, an unsafe world, immoral behavior everywhere you look. The mass media feeds it to the people, the government makes new laws to make the people feel better, and the corporations use the hysteria to make a buck and extend their power even more. And so virtually any law proposed that will lock criminals in prison, never mind what the actual definition of a criminal is, those laws will easily pass. Anything that makes our already pampered existence safer has to be good for us. That's why you're never able to buy a cup of coffee in America without the word hot written all over it. In case you decide to spill it all over yourself, you have to be warned, you have to be protected from yourself. That's why you never see an intersection that doesn't have a traffic light or a stop sign, because we can't be trusted to make a decision on our own, to judge our own wits there. In this country, everywhere you look, you see yield signs, because, look, if it's safe, go. In America, it's like, no, all must stop. Wait, then go. You can't be trusted yourself. And that's also why our entertainment has to be as watered down as humanly possible. We don't want to offend the farmer in Ohio. We don't want to offend the housewife in Montana. We have to be protected from ourselves. And I don't have to tell you what the concept of immoral behavior on the internet has gotten us. But what I find absolutely incredible about all of this is that everyone knows the way we do things back in America is destructive, ultimately self-defeating. Sometimes I get the feeling the rest of the world is just tolerating us so they can see how badly we fuck it up. But then there are other times when the rest of the world seems to want to imitate us. What the hell is up with that? I mean, if you guys in the rest of the world don't continue to resist our dominance and utterly simplistic ways of dealing with problems, you're going to be playing by our rules. Oh, we say we're the foundation of freedom and tolerance and all that crap, but look around you. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the Clipper chip, carnivore, and not to mention the crass commercialization of everything we touch, especially the internet. The last time I spoke at an outdoor hacker gathering in this country was back in 1993. Hackers at the End of the Universe, HEU. Back then, the internet was the hope of the future, a means for anyone to have a voice. And now it's all about money. That's how this notion that big business owns the net somehow managed to take root. And we need to correct them on that little misassumption. We need to also not be blinded by all the cash they throw at us. I've seen many an independent spirit be crushed in the corporate world. I mean, sure, you can make $100,000 at the age of 18, but is that worth giving up your freedom and your ability to create, contribute in your own unique way? You work for one of those .coms, and in most cases, anything you create belongs to them. Anything you learn while there, you can't talk about with others. They will read your email. They will analyze your piss. They will make you blindly obedient to them even on your days off. And they will make you believe that what they do is right until one day you start to do it yourself. And then the day comes when they decide they no longer need you. And that's when they send armed security guards to escort you from the building like you're a common criminal. After all that, is being a little poor such a bad thing? An independent mind is worth far more than they can ever offer. In our system in the States, virtually everything you're supposed to do is, is designed to make you want to belong and be like everyone else. And as I look out here, I see a lot of people who don't look like anyone else I've ever seen. And that's a good thing. But I just want to clarify one important point before I finish up. The American people aren't stupid. They're not as stupid as the American government and the American media want them to be. In fact, I think most people are as cynical about the authorities as I am. But like every other oppressed society, we keep to ourselves. We tolerate the spy cameras in Florida, knowing full well that the day is going to come when they'll be misused by the police. Probably already have been to the detriment of our privacy. We re-elect the same idiots year after year, knowing full well they're going to keep coming up with stupid laws that make it illegal to listen to certain radio frequencies or figure out how to decrypt software. We let them convince us that crime is such a problem that we have to lock up more than 2 million of our citizens, most of them for nonviolent offenses that most other countries would ignore. We imprison more people than any other country, both percentage-wise and number-wise. So don't ever let it be said that America isn't a tolerant place. We've been tolerating all kinds of shit from our government for years. So why does this all matter? What does it have to do with a hacker conference? Well, when we started 2600 back in 1984, we weren't thinking of the bigger global picture. Back then, we just wanted to play with technology and share information, as most of the people here do. And of course, we still do. But it's become a lot more dangerous over the years. And we have a real obligation to be alert and to tell people what we know and why it matters and how it affects them, people outside the hacker world. And this is especially true in the States, where hackers probably have more of a clue of what's going on than most people. We know how the technology works, we know how it can be abused, how it can be improved, and when we're being lied to by the people who have no clue, but the people who have an agenda. This is what makes us so dangerous. This is why we continue to be targeted by authorities in every country, in every school, in every shopping mall. That's why we continue to be around. I think one person who really understood that, who really saw the connection, was Val Howard, one of the founders of the Chaos Computer Club. One of the first people I met when I came over here for a hacker conference back in 1989. And one of the people who never stopped trying to find and shape the significance of technology as it relates to society. And there's a quote of his on the main CCC page right now. We must respect the rights of the dissenters. Even though they might be idiots or harmful, we have to pay attention. Val died just 2 weeks ago at the way too young age of 49. And as great as how 2001 will be, it would have been so much better if he were here. And I hope we all think of him during this weekend. Things have changed a lot over the years, and despite the fact that a lot more people today want to be hackers than ever before, there is still an integrity and spirit to those people who really are hackers. And there's something that hasn't changed. And that's why I'm proud to be here. And despite the fact that mainstream may never get it, that's why you should be proud too. Have fun.